Of the 6 exams that I instruct, the GRE is the only one that still tests on vocabulary. Don't get me wrong, the ACT, SAT, and TOEFL have vocabulary questions, but they're embedded into passages, so they can be called vocabulary in context questions. And the difficulty level of the words is significantly easier than it was in the past. For example, on the SAT, if you're like me and you took the SAT more than about 4 or 5 years ago, you had to memorize exhaustive lists of those so-called SAT words, for example, pecuniary or sartorial. And unfortunately, it's exactly those kinds of words that are still tested on the GRE, and they're almost isolated. So if that abnegates the mise en garde of your sang-froid, then I'm very lachrymose. Why do they do that? Why do they test you on archaic words that you will probably never use? It's personal, they don't like you. Actually, the vocabulary test is not a vocabulary test, it's a reading test. The vast majority of your vocabulary you got from reading. If you were illiterate, your vocabulary would decrease by as much as 90%. In America, vocabulary is the only way that I can determine whether or not you are a reader. In a normal country like, for example, France, where there is a national curriculum, they don't care if you're black, white, brown, green, or purple. Everybody is reading Madame Bovary, and that's the end of that. So when French students take entrance exams, they are tested on the actual works of literature that they read. Setting, characters, plot, and themes. In America, because of our diversity, we often have difficulty agreeing on what everyone should study, including the books that we read. There is no national curriculum, and in fact, the curriculum can vary from school district to school district. I would like to think that every student in American schools reads Catcher in the Rye or To Kill a Mockingbird, but unfortunately, that's not the case. We don't all read the same books. So I can't test you on the works of literature that you've read. So the only way that a national exam can determine whether or not you are a reader is by testing you on vocabulary. Despite the fact that the GRE leans so heavily toward the liberal arts, not everyone who takes it is in the humanities. Everyone from artists to engineers takes the GRE. Why is that? MCAT's for medicine, LSAT's for law, GMAT's for business, and apparently the GRE is for pretty much everything else. It's kind of like this catch-all exam for the rejects from the professions. I've had clients who take the GRE who are studying everything from filmmaking to microbiology. It doesn't seem fair, but bear with me. Reading and writing are the foundations of all Western education. And no matter how STEM your field is, if you study it, you're going to have to read and write a lot. And we've established that the GRE vocabulary test is actually a reading test. So one of the best things that you can do to prepare for it is to just freaking read, dude. Intelligent and educated adults have a lifelong habit of daily reading. The phrase, "I am bored," is a phrase that should not exist in your vocabulary. Being a reader shows that you're curious and you can think abstractly. Good qualities for both students and researchers. Again, one of the best things you can do to prepare for the GRE is to read a work of quality literature. So no, the CNN headlines in the Twitter feed on your phone don't count. You can read Harry Potter or Twilight or 50 Shades if you want to, but whatever you read, enjoy it. We don't read the Iliad and Beowulf and Shakespeare because our English teachers make us. We read them because they're freaking badass. We still read works of literature that are hundreds and thousands of years old because they appeal to the universal human condition. That being said, if you don't have time to read the entire Western literary canon before your exam, you're going to have to take the traditional route, which is apparently to memorize a bunch of vocab. I recommend that you memorize 1,000 to 2,000 words before the exam. Be careful how you go about it, though. It's time to take your 13-year-old junior high, middle school flashcards and throw them in the trash. I hate flashcards because they're lame and they don't work. There's an expression in English, you can't take it with you. If you can't take something with you into the exam, that's not a study aid, that's a crutch. Pretty much the only thing you have with you in the exam is your brain. And the brain is a muscle. Just as you train your lats at the gym, you can also train your brain. And so it's time to learn something called method of loci or memory palace. Method of loci or memory palace is an ancient memorization technique that has been beautifully outlined in a TED Talk that I linked to on my website. But basically the underlying premise is that memory is an actual physical location. To understand it, imagine the following scenario. Let's say you're cleaning your home, and as you clean, you think about things. So you're in one room cleaning one thing, and you think about something. Then you go to another room to clean something different, and you think about something else. But when you return to the first room and the first thing that you were cleaning, you resume thinking about what you were thinking about at that time. That's kind of how method of loci works. To do it, you want to create inside your imagination, your mind's eye, your memory palace, which is an actual physical location. It can be real or imagined. Many people use their homes or their childhood homes. And as you move about this space, again, in your imagination, you attach what you want to remember to actual physical locations and objects. For example, if I'm memorizing vocabulary words, I can attach a word to the vase on the coffee table. I can attach a word to the sleeve of my favorite shirt hanging in my closet. And whatever you want to memorize doesn't really have to have anything to do with the object that you attach it to. And this technique will help you not only with GRE vocabulary, but also with any subject in which you have to memorize things. If you memorize a bunch of vocab before the exam, your work is half done. The number one reason people get GRE vocabulary problems wrong is they didn't understand the original sentence or passage. I've seen correct answers to GRE vocabulary problems that contain words like depend, general, and through. Not very difficult, but people get them wrong anyway. Why is that? That's because the entire exam is written by failed, frustrated writers who hate themselves. It's a horrible style, but for now, it is your job just to understand it. I know there are two types of vocabulary problems, but it doesn't matter. The strategy is the same for both. It's a 4-step strategy. First, you want to summarize the original sentence or passage as best you can. Try to put it in normal human English so you have some idea of what's going on. Second, look for context clues. These are the emotionally charged words, the sort of flesh or meat of the sentence or passage. And often I find that these words don't come until the end of the sentence or passage. It's like the author decided to add them as an afterthought to finally let you know what is going on. Third, look for transitions. Transitions are like traffic signs or signals that let you know in what direction the sentence or passage is going. Is it cause-effect? Is it contrast? I have a list of transitions on my website. I include that information in the description. And punctuation marks like semicolons and colons can be transitions as well. Fourth and finally, just as throughout the verbal parts of any standardized exam, you want to answer the problem before you even look at the answer choices. You want to put your own word or words in the blank or blanks. You can use very simple words, and you can even borrow words from the original sentence or passage. And if you're really struggling to put your own words in the blanks, at the very least, identify if it is positive, negative, or neutral. Now, this strategy is difficult to employ when you're actually taking the exam, but if you practice with it enough, hopefully it will become like a habit that you can do automatically in your subconscious mind. Finally, there are a few things to look out for on GRE Vocab. First, for some reason throughout the verbal parts of any standardized exam, duality is very important. Duality is a binary opposition, black and white, masculine, feminine, yin, yang. So if you see something like that, It's a good context clue leading you to the correct answer. For example, if in one half of the sentence you see black and white, and in the other half of the sentence you see dark and blank, you know you're looking for light or similar words or expressions. Second, also for some reason throughout the verbal parts of any standardized exam, time is very important. If time is in the original sentence or passage, it will be a factor in the correct answers. And finally, pay attention to tone, because English has had so many influences historically. It has a lot of synonyms, but those synonyms don't all have the same tone. For example, let's take the words frugal, stingy, thrifty, and cheap. I'm talking about the quality of being economical, but as you can sense, those words don't all have the same tone. So that's an introduction to GRE Vocab. To read more in detail, including example problems of both sentence equivalence and text completion, along with answer explanations, including process of elimination, please visit my website. I include the information in the description. And for a private lesson with me, please also visit my website. That information too is in the description. I've worked online with people from all over the world, and I'd love to work with you. Take care.